Okay, in this video, we're going to look at the 7 deadly sins. We're going to look at what are the 3 virtues one needs in decadent times. So in the times we're in, you will get screwed up. You will get screwed up mentally, emotionally, spiritually. It's the nature of the world we're in today, decadent times we're in. And there are 3 virtues, to use an old-fashioned word, that you need to develop that will inoculate you, I think it's a good word, immunize you. I'm going to get banned if I say this, from the worst of decadence. And if you don't have practices to develop these, you know, you'll become what's around us, which isn't good. Yeah. A dirty top on today. Oh dear, the decadence, awful. My protein shake's been spilled on me. My dear boy, spilled my protein shake on me. Anyway, so what are these 3? Well, the first one's strength. Okay, so decadence requires that we are weak, that we are kept fragile by the system we're in, so that we can be infantilized by it, so that we're good consumers, so that we don't have agency, we don't have sovereignty. We are kept weak and fragile. We had good times have created soft men, but it's not just the good times. That's definitely a part of it. We don't have the challenges people in the past had, or many of the times in the past, but it's also deliberately done. It's also deliberately done by the state and the economic powers that be. You can be more or less conspiratorial about that. It's just a fact of the modern world. We are comically fucking weak. Unfortunately, decadence has made a virtue out of weakness. And you'll notice the sort of sacred groups of the woke left are all the groups who are considered, rightly or wrongly, often wrongly, considered fragile, considered in some way vulnerable. These are the protected groups, they're literally called in the UK. This is a sort of decadent reworking of Christianity, essentially, philosophically. I think that's where it comes from. The sort of Christian... blessed are the meek, the kind of Christian Christianity becomes a victim cult, particularly in sort of socialist kind of hands. And that victim cult means that it's bad to be strong in a decadent culture. Decadent culture sees strength not just as a virtue, but as a vice. It becomes kind of like a new sin, you know, I call it the 3 new sins of decadence. So the sin there is strength, and actually the virtue one needs strength, yeah? So you will be given shit for this. You will, if you are strong, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, you will, that is something that people actively discourage. Actively discourage is strength. So first thing one needs to develop, and yes, you know, starting with the physical, that is the foundation. If you are weak and unable to defend oneself and one loves one, you will be anxious. You know, it's why is there so much anxiety? Because people have become prey animals. Yeah, well, I don't feel anxious when I walk down the street. I'm just smiling at everyone. I've got nothing to be afraid of. You know, lions aren't anxious. So start with the martial arts, start with basic physical health and well-being, you know, according to your age, body, etc., etc. We're all at a different starting point there. And yeah, by the way, if you'd have seen me at 16 before I got into martial arts, sort of skinny hair, you know, kind of camp, and I actually got in a fight and I couldn't defend myself. And I thought, wow, all the books I read, 'cause I was kind of a clever kid, just haven't helped me here. And it became obvious to me that you couldn't talk your way out of some things. You needed that base of security. So there's strength there, but, you know, don't stop there. For me, it's a shame if someone spends hours a day in the gym and doesn't read books, doesn't learn anything, doesn't listen to podcasts. It's like, come on. There's so much opportunity for learning now, the sort of mental side of things. And for me, maturity is really in the emotional side of things, your own self-regulation, your own restraint, your own self-management, moral integrity. You can take strength into a whole bunch of other virtues, really, at this point, moral strength. I guess that really brings us on to the second big vice and virtue. Vice according to decadence, right? Virtue according to, I don't know, all the civilizations of the world in one form or another to a greater or lesser extent, and that's restraint. So this isn't fashionable. Like the West has got this very individualistic culture, which is, you know, great in many ways. People know I'm a fan of the West, but there's this feeling of I'll do what I want. You know, like the West often feels kind of teenage to people from more mature cultures, or for more initiated people. And this idea of I'll do what I want, like restraint, is certainly not encouraged by our economic system. You know, our economic system absolutely relies upon the fact that people don't have restraint. It relies upon the fact that people consume, people go for everything they can. And this, I think, includes sexually, in terms of the kind of sexual decadence we'll see in the postmodern world. Obviously, it comes to food for a lot of people. You know, I love food. Again, I find it hard not to eat sometimes, so I do get it. I don't speak from perfection here, but there's a degree of restraint. And I do fasting, I do intermittent fasting and 3-day fast and different things. I just kind of reset my system, teach me restraint. You know, when you go into a silent retreat, you agree not to speak for a few days or a couple of weeks or whatever it is. Like restraint of, you know, social contact, being solitary for a bit can be very helpful. There's all sorts of kinds of restraint, and all of them just put us back in control of our animal urges. You know, like we have those urges, they're all natural. They don't need to sort of get too puritanical about these different urges that exist. You can enjoy life, but without restraint, you actually end up not enjoying life and getting more and more addicted to everything, going sort of down a path that's really not healthy. Yeah, so, you know, restraint is the least decadent thing. So again, restraint gets a bad rep in decadence. People are considered uncool. People are considered, you know, like square. It's absolutely bizarre, because it's always been a classical virtue. And yeah, like anything can be taken too far. You know, Aristotle said virtue is between 2 points. So you have, on the one hand, you have the sort of gluttony and hedonism of decadence. But yeah, on the other hand, you could have this sort of, you know, very dry, flavorless life, not doing anything fun or interesting. But most people in decadence are way over the side of sort of gluttony and hedonism. So yeah, I'd say restraint is the second one. Third one that I'd say, again, becomes a virtue, becomes a vice in a decadent culture, is faith. This is even even more uncool word. So what do I mean by faith? So faith is this idea of a leap of faith of purpose, usually. Not being nihilistic, believing in something, not being cynical, which is the classic emotional defense of the decadent man, that they're defended with cynicism to stop them acknowledging the gaping hole they're trying to fill with fucking pleasure and bullshit. And that faith could be a religious faith, you know, sort of how the word's classically understood. For many people, that will help them be less decadent. It's something I've certainly seen. It can also just be a faith in the spirit of the West. You know, for me, that's one. Animism is a faith. You know, it's not, I have a set of pagan beliefs, but there's a faith that there's something going on there. There's a intuition, a deep embodied intuition that the world is alive in a way which just isn't scientifically materialist. There's a bit more to it than that. So when I say faith, I don't necessarily mean you're sort of praying to a god in a traditional sense, though it could be that. It could be that. We are devotional creatures. We do need to devote ourselves to something, and that requires faith. And again, that doesn't have to mean believing something without logic. It can go, well, you know what? I am drawn to this. This feels right. My heart says yes to this. So fuck it, I'm going to go with it. In that way, you can see faith as a kind of commitment as much as anything. It's also a kind of courage. Sometimes my friend Matt Hill, I do courses with Palestra courses, says that courage is the virtue that brings out the other virtues. Like in the British Army, for example, it's like virtue number 1 on their kind of list. You know, the military have to develop virtues because they want good soldiers. You know, it's just like somehow the rest of society's forgotten it. And it's number 1 on the list in the British Army, I believe, so I'm told. So, because otherwise the rest just don't work. And faith can be like that. Faith can be a sort of form of courage that even in the face of not being sure, even in the face of the nihilism of decadence, to have the courage to say, you know what, I believe in something, I commit to something, and there's more to life. There's more to life, right? There's more to life than materialistic pleasures. So, let's have a look at this from another angle. I wrote them down. The 7 deadly sins. Again, this idea of sin, they've made, the culture, decadent culture's made all these words, they sound awful and old-fashioned, like sinner, you know, like you're some sort of small-minded bigot. yeah, I think it was Peterson who says sin, it just means to miss the mark, to be not on target. Yeah, I think it's another nice way of looking at it. If we're going to have virtues, though, we need vices. Yeah, we need to say there is such a good thing as good and bad. We're not going to descend into moral relativism and say, oh, it's fine. And, you know, I mean, where does that lead? It leads to it's interesting, actually, at the moment, there's this big pushback against child trafficking, which is great, which is bloody brilliant. And it's like, yeah, we know that's wrong. You can't say, well, it's cultural and it depends. And no. We know it's wrong to use children, abuse children that way. We know it's wrong in our hearts. And yeah, it's good to see people kind of making a stand, at least on that. So, what are 7 deadly sins? Can you name them? Try. Pause this. Try. All right. Pride, number 1. It's actually the biggest festival of the decadent calendar, isn't it? Pride. And, you know, I wish gay people well. I'm not anti-gay people, but certainly whatever Pride Month is now, it's not just about gay people loving each other, is it? It's something else. It's definitely something else. So pride, yeah, is a sin. I mean, decadence doesn't have humility. It's been a big one for me in my life, actually, trying to develop humility. Life has bashed it into me. Second one, greed. So, again, we live in a consumer society. Greed is encouraged. And greed is all sorts of greed, right? Like, think how many podcasts you download. It's like people want to travel every country in the world. There's materialistic greed, but there's another level from that as well. This, you know, greed exists. I'm going to sleep with all the women. Tried that. Didn't work very well. So, yeah, greed. Wrath. So wrath is, you know, people getting angry with each other. So, you know, increasingly I see sort of social justice types are really proud of their anger. Like, yeah, it's good. We've got to smash the system, smash the patriarchy, and really being encouraged into hatred. Which is weird, actually, because they're also big on like hate crime being a thing, but as defined, meaning the views that they don't like, as far as I can tell. Yeah. Envy. So envy's definitely a big one in the world. Definitely a big one in the world. We are encouraged to be envious and compare ourselves to others on social media. It's interesting, a lot of it was George Orwell was actually a leftist, said most socialists don't love the poor, they just hate the rich. And you do see that attempt to bring anyone down who has any kind of virtue. Lust, again, a given, lack of restraint there. Talked about that. Gluttony, again, a lack of restraint. And sloth, for me, sloth's a sort of lack of vigor, a lack of strength, a lack of vitality. You know, that is what culture encourages in people, is to be sitting on the couch all day. So just a few thoughts there, really, on virtues, vices. I just say, if you follow this channel, if you like this channel, don't let people turn those virtues into vices. Don't let them frame your faith or your strength, or your ability to say no. You know, for me, it's not drinking alcohol as an alcoholic, you know, whatever it is for you, where you need restraint. Don't let them turn that into a bad thing. Actually, you know, take a stand on it and say, no, this is what I believe. This is what I want to encourage in my friends. This is what I want to, more of what I want to see in the world. That starts with us. So, yeah, let's start talking about virtues again. Start talking about virtues again and make that okay.